I didn't think cinematic continuity could be worse than comic book continuity, but here we are. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati, the man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. Marvel Studios has announced that its new Fantastic Four movie will not be set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe everyone knows and has watched for over a decade in multiple movies. Now, according to reports, Marvel Studios executive Kevin Feige has confirmed that the new Fantastic Four movie will not be set in the standard Marvel Cinematic Universe where we got to know Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, the Hulk, and the Avengers who were a part of that Marvel Cinematic Universe. No, this Fantastic Four movie will actually be set in the 1960s in New York in an alternate Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, this decision to set the Fantastic Four in a separate Marvel Cinematic Universe, this alternate world, is all part of Kevin Feige's Phase 4 and Phase 5 of his multiverse saga that started with the new Phase 4 and Phase 5 that started with the movie Eternals and was built up in movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Mediocrity. Now, those two movies basically introduced us to the quantum realm, which really we got introduced to it in Ant-Man and the Wasp and Avengers Endgame, and it further expands on that whole multiverse that's supposed to be a whole series of alternate universes, and these alternate universes are supposed to be different worlds, and these different worlds are a part of this multiverse of characters. Now, Kevin Feige believes that this multiverse of characters will open the door for bigger stories in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, such as the Kang Dynasty and the Secret Wars. But what could happen here is that Kevin Feige could wind up losing even more of the audience than he lost with Marvel Studios' Phase 4, and Phase 5, where many of these movies have not resonated with audiences the way that it did with the Infinity Saga. Now, the Infinity Saga was a very easy to follow storyline, which basically was very linear, and each movie that came in the Infinity Saga was easy to follow because each movie built on the momentum of the previous movie, and every member of the audience could easily follow them, similar to old school comic books where you could follow the story as related to the storyline, and you could either watch the more recent movie and then go back to older movies. But with the multiverse concept, it becomes a lot harder for the viewer to follow, similar to the way it becomes harder for the reader to follow the overall continuity of the entire series. Because with multiverses, what happens is because there are so many different alternate worlds, you stop answering a critical question a screenwriter like myself has to answer, and that question is, why should we care? I mean, it's hard to care about a cinematic universe when the continuity winds up changing due to alternate worlds, and it's hard for the average everyday person to invest in a world when that world basically we're shown that it really doesn't matter because there's another world out there which features the same characters. And that's what makes this whole multiverse a bit of a problem for all creators, because it basically takes the stakes out of the story. And once you take the stakes out of the story, you stop answering the critical question that incentivizes viewers to be wanting to watch more of the movies. And that question again is, why should we care? Why should the audience care if these characters are not something that are considered valuable to the creators at this point? I mean, why should the audience care about investing in a fantasy world to escape in when there's another world out there that features the same characters? And if one of those characters dies, basically that character can be easily replaced by an alternate reality version, and that alternate reality version can then pick up the story. It basically takes the stakes out of a story, and if you take the stakes out of a story by making the characters disposable, what that does is it makes it where the audience just stops caring, and the audience has no if the audience has no reason to care, they have no reason to go out and buy these tickets to go see movies like Marvel Studios' Fantastic Four, because if the Fantastic Four are not unique and distinct, then nobody has, a reason to continue buying tickets to go see these movies. No, nobody has a reason to go buy tickets to go see these movies if the world that these characters on has no sort of risk, no sort of stakes, and no reason to care. I mean, if every character can be just easily you can go to an alternate Earth, pluck another character from an alternate universe onto this Earth, then you've basically made it where these characters are just as replaceable as either matches or toilet paper or any object, and they're not someone special that's unique that we care about. And that really hampers all of the character transformation arcs of the previous story, because with Avengers Endgame, what made that movie distinct and what that made that movie so special was Tony Stark's sacrifice with the Infinity Gems, and this whole multiverse basically makes it where that sacrifice isn't special, and it makes it where, since Tony Stark's sacrifice isn't special, then the audience at this point really has a reason to care, because everything in the MCU is basically there arbitrarily, and anybody can arbitrarily just remove one point and replace it with something else. So you've basically damaged the entire structure of the MCU with this whole approach that many comic writers took as related to comic books in the, I believe, 70s and the 80s with these alternate universes. And many writers oftentimes use alternate universes sparingly in comics, but it does a lot of damage. It's done a lot of damage to the structure of places like the Marvel Universe and the DC Universe. And over at DC, it did so much damage that they had to have a big part multiverse saga called the Crisis of Infinite Earths to get the continuity to be easier to follow. And over at Marvel, the structure was so damaged by alternate universes that they had to do a reset with a event called the Secret Wars in 2015. And when it comes to these universes, again, when the continuity gets that structurally damaged, there's no coming back at that point, because the audience becomes so frustrated and so confused as related to these different alternate worlds that it becomes a headache for the average everyday person to follow. So when it comes to these alternate universes, it's a real bad sign creatively for most of these creators. It's a really bad sign, because when you have alternate universes, what that does is make it where you start to see that the writers are running out of ideas, the writers are starting to burn out. And I believe with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, once Thanos did the snap, that basically was the point where the entire MCU started to fall apart structurally, because once you did the snap and you wound up murdering half of that universe, and then had the Avengers go out here and compromise their ethics to create their own Infinity Gauntlet, that's where we started to see the structure of the MCU start to fall completely apart as it tried to mimic some of these Marvel comics. Unfortunately, as they did this damage, they didn't see the long-term ramifications on the structure of the MCU, because when it comes to comic books, yes, you might be able to do these kind of stories for a while, but with cinema, it's completely different. And with cinema, the audience is not going to accept things like alternate universes and multi-dimensional multiverses. It's that stuff becomes a headache for the average everyday person. So when I look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe and I look at the structure of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's really in a bad place when you're setting the story of the Fantastic Four in an alternate universe in the 60s. It's in a really bad place because here you have the story of Marvel's first family, and Marvel's first family is being treated like something that doesn't matter, because when you set a story in the Marvel Cinematic Universe of the characters who basically started the Marvel Cinematic Universe in an alternate universe, it makes it where you show that you don't care about Marvel's first family and their impact on the Marvel Universe. No, what this does is basically show that Kevin Feige really doesn't care about what the Fantastic Four mean and doesn't understand what the Fantastic Four mean to the overall Marvel Cinematic Universe. He has basically just torn completely apart. I mean, he's just decimated the Marvel Cinematic Universe in an effort to get quick box office and cash grab with the Infinity Saga, and that short-term money that he made with the Infinity Saga basically has not really kept the Marvel Cinematic Universe functional for a long term, and that's all because he wasn't focused on maintaining the structure of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he's thinking that he can do things like the Deadpool and Wolverine movie with the alternate universes, but this stuff, again, for the average comic fan becomes cumbersome and hard to follow, and a movie audience would have similar issues with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They would have similar issues with the Marvel Cinematic Universe due to the overall problem of alternate universes. This was one of the reasons why I found the X-Men comic in the 80s to be so frustrating, because Chris Claremont kept doing things with alternate universes, people with time travel. It becomes a headache for the average everyday person, and that may further exacerbate the problems that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been having at the box office ever since Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania wound up flopping at the box office, starting a domino effect as related to box office failures such as the Marvels, and the upcoming Captain America: Brave New World may be another domino, and the Fantastic Four might possibly follow as another domino, since it's not set in the standard MCU, and there was no way to really set it in the MCU due to the Thanos snap and the dysfunctional way that they restored that timeline, because in the original Infinity Gauntlet, there was a reason why Nebula took the Infinity Gauntlet off Thanos as related to him getting ultimate cosmic power and restoring the universe. They didn't have a hero go out here and reset the universe, because that would make it where that hero's ethics were compromised. So they had Nebula, a villain, do this and restore the universe so that they could go back and tell more stories. Unfortunately, what Kevin Feige did was he possibly saw that that whole storyline basically wasn't really structurally sound and thought he could rebuild another one, not understanding Infinity Gauntlet in and of itself was a very weak story. And with Infinity Gauntlet being a very weak story, what it did was he was trying to reset the universe, but reset it in a cumbersome way that basically did more damage, because as he brought back the other half of the universe, he put a plot point in that said 5 years had passed, but if you've got a time stone, you can reset everything back to the way it was. And again, that was the direction he should have gone in, because that would have, again, made it where there would have been place for the Fantastic Four and the X-Men in the standard MCU. And basically, you could have just said that Thanos' snap basically took away these teams the same way it did in Infinity Gauntlet, and that these teams were still around. But this workaround basically makes it where this overall story structure has basically fallen completely apart, and we may get yet another flop in the MCU, because the MCU at this point, basically the movies are costing way more money than they possibly make at the box office, because we've just had 3 straight consecutive flops, multiple consecutive flop TV shows, and again, we're building towards movies that may cost more than $1 billion. I mean, when I look at Secret Wars and I look at the Kang Dynasty, we're looking at 2 movies that may cost anywhere from $500 million to $750 million, and with Captain America: Brave New World costing $375 million, these movies are just getting budgets that are into the stratosphere, and its parent company Disney cannot really afford to keep making these movies because these movies just do not make a return on the investment. They don't make a return on the investment because with movies like the Captain America Brave New World costing $375 million, that film has to clear at least $1.5 billion in order to break even, and it has to get $2 to $3 billion to pull a profit, and there's just not enough human beings on the planet to watch this movie for it to be able to make that kind of money. And with the movie having a black lead, and I don't mean to be racist when I say this, but when it has a black male lead playing a hand-me-down character, that movie is already hobbled, and I don't really think that they can really start making these movies be hits because they're on the same trajectory that the movie studios were in the 1960s when they were making all of these war movies, epic movies, and historical pictures. And that's where Hollywood went into a decline. And when I look at this Marvel Studios, it's a superhero movie franchise that's basically in a decline and in a place where I don't think that they're going to be able to make any money outside of maybe a possible another Spider-Man movie. But when it comes to the Fantastic Four are not in a fantastic place, and this adaptation I don't think is going to be better than Tim Story's Fantastic Four from the 2000s. No, this Fantastic Four basically has been hobbled by Kevin Feige, who is desperate to get a hit, but doesn't see how he's his own worst enemy, and the damage he's doing to the Marvel Cinematic Universe is basically just crumbled its structure, and that's why Marvel's first family is in a place where it may be in last place and possibly might be the last movie of the MCU. Now, if you want to try out my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can find that comic on Lulu.com right now in paperback, and you can pick up a copy for the same price people paid for the 2022 Kickstarter. And if you want to try out my first full digital comic, Esteem, No Good Deed, you can find that comic on Kindle for 99 cents on Amazon.com, along with the other books of the SJS Direct universe, such as those in the ISIS series, such as those in the Esteem series, such as those in the John Haynes series, the Spinsterella trilogy, a Black Goth trilogy, my vampire novel Eternal Night, my Black sorority novel The Thetas, and my Black business novel Recipe for Success. And if you want to see me be able to make more videos about comics, science fiction, and fantasy, or help me to be able to publish more books on the SJS Direct imprint and help pay for the covers or help me be able to make the next SJS Direct Universe comic, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback at e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.